Welcome to the Front End Nerdery podcast, a podcast about front end development and design. I'm your host, Todd Libby, and I'll be talking with people in tech about a number of different topics about front end design and development and what they're working on and doing. Today is a little bit different because we're going to talk about topics that are not specifically front end focused, but today I have with me full stack web developer, speaker, and Twitch streamer extraordinaire. My guest today is Prince Wilson. Prince, how are you today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome, and thanks for coming on. Definitely, I've been looking forward to this one, and we'll go into the reasons why in a little bit. So, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, like you mentioned before, like outside of my day job, I do Twitch streaming. I love to program live on Twitch with a bunch of folks because one, it's kind of a way for me to show off what I'm learning, as well as to take everyone along with me through the journey. And then during my day job, I work as a full stack web engineer at a company called Newzella, where we help educate people, or we help schools K through 12 with our product, where we actually take articles from different publications like the New York Times, the AP, and we level that so students at different reading levels can be able to read that. And I work on our design systems team.
Excellent. I am a big design system fan myself, so I love design systems. Okay, so first question is, how did you get started in your journey in web design and development?
That's a great question. So I was fortunate enough, what started my journey essentially was I really wanted to make video games, but I was like, this is kind of hard. I got one of these, it's an older book now, but it was like how to build a video game in C#. And I was like, oh, this will be great. I'll need this. And then I started reading. I was like, I don't understand any of these symbols that I'm reading. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, I'll put this away. But I got closer to graduating high school, and then I was like, oh, I want to still pursue this somehow. And it eventually kind of switched gears from going straight to video game development actually to building applications, because I was like, this kind of correlates to what I want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
In school, I studied computer science, which I was very fortunate to have that as an opportunity. But I was like, I'm not learning anything that's actually directly helping me to what I want to be doing. And so I helped start my school's like tech club, where we actually build applications and whatnot. And that's how I essentially built my community. And that took me all the way to now being into a career, doing the things that I love. The career started with developer relations and then switched into education, and then to actually being a full-time engineer.
Cool. So on the topic of streaming, I know you mentioned, and I know you stream on Twitch. I do. I haven't for a while. I just go on and do my thing, whatever I'm doing then. And I know you through the Party Corgi Discord. And, you touched a little bit about what you do on your streams. So in your mind, what is the best part of streaming?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, I think it's like, I really enjoy being able to share the aha moment with everyone. I think like for me, that's like when I was teaching people how to program, I loved like seeing the aha for them. And so being able to like collectively be able to go through this journey together and have everyone be like, like we're building this thing together. It's not just like I'm teaching to them or they're teaching to me. It's like we are collectively saying like we get to shape the app as we want. For me, that's been exciting. And especially when I do things that are like out of my comfort zone, it's like, oh man, we just like finally made it through. It's like, that's the juicy high, I guess I'm trying to find.
Yep. Yeah. That aha moment you mentioned, one of my streams, I was working on something and I had that aha moment and I'm like, oh wow. And I had a few people in the chat and chat went nuts, and I was
like, everyone's here to hype you up. Like they're just they're and I think that's what I love about Twitch too, is that you get to have that as an opportunity, right? Is like you have to have people who get to cheer with you in that celebration, in that moment, which is sometimes really hard, especially, uh, being in a dev job. Sometimes you don't get to see like everyone around you get that aha. And so I think that's why I really like the Twitch format.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so anyone out there that is thinking of, because I know a few people that are thinking of, yeah, I think I want to stream on Twitch, but I'm kind of like hesitant or nervous. What advice would you give to those people that are thinking about it or starting out?
There's a few different things I'd give. First and foremost is just push record, like just push go live, like just do it. I think the very first one feels like the most intimidating because it's like, oh my gosh, like will everything go right, like will people show up? And the most important part of that is like you don't have to have people show up to still enjoy doing the thing. Like you're doing something that you love and people are going to share that with you. And I think that's like the most important like thing to ground myself in always. Is like I don't care if there's a bunch of people there. Sometimes it might be just me, maybe it's just like a handful of people, but like those people that are coming there want to be there for you. And I think that's like always a reassuring thing. Is like people want to see you do the thing, and they want to share that experience with you, whether you're doing things that are programming or if it's even just playing video games. Like Twitch's kind of brand is like everyone actually just wants to see you do the thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is um don't don't worry about whether or not you have like the most top quality like things and whatnot, because like at the end of the day, like you might not like doing it, which is totally valid. Like you do it after you do it the one time, you do it a few times, you might be like, I don't know if I really want to do this, and that's totally valid. So don't over invest into having all of this like fancy equipment if you're not interested in doing it for longer.
Yeah. Yeah. People can look into my kitchen, so it's like it doesn't matter. I have a nice, for me, this is a real nice microphone setup and everything, and I just plug and play, and
I
that's all
think
I do.
that's totally fine, right? Like
Yeah.
as long as you're doing the thing where it's reaching people, like
Yeah.
people at the end of the day won't care. And I think like they're here for you and not the quality of it, the quality of the items themselves.
Right. Right. And also, and you've probably had people doing this during your streams. You have the people that are like, oh, I didn't know that, and now I learned something. I learned how to do that today, and that gives me the feeling of, if I can help one person with this issue, that makes my day great.
100%. And that happens whether you're like an experienced developer or
Mhm.
a beginner developer. I think like that I learned something new is it doesn't matter who it's coming from, but like I think that in itself is like it doesn't matter where, you always have the opportunity to learn something new. And I think that's what Twitch affords people, is like that space of creating new.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, helping people out in web development, what advice would you give to people looking to get into web development, or even just starting out in web development?
I think that I wish I had a good advice. I think my advice really comes down to having the patience.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of things, especially programming in a whole, uh, things aren't going to work the first time. Things might not work the second time. They might not work to the 10th time. But each time you like afford the ability to learn something about why it didn't work. And I think that's one of the things that like I really enjoy about programming, is I get to learn what doesn't work to the pathway of like, okay, what is the thing I need to have? And I think for web development, it's especially challenging because you're working not only in like your own system of like your computer and like the specific stuff that you have, but you're helping other computers with different systems that you don't know, different devices, different things in general. And so it's like hard to know everything as well. So like just be comfortable with not needing to know everything. You might need to know just enough things. But between
Exactly.
like making mistakes and being comfortable with not knowing everything, like those are the two things that's totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've learned from people just starting out. Oh, I didn't know that. That's or I totally forgot about that because you know,
You just see it for so long, and you're like,
yeah.
this is like you just don't draw the connections, and things are changing.
Hmm.
Things constantly are evolving. Even the things that are new become newer, and it's like, how did that happen? Like, when did this happen? And I think that's kind of the fun part of web development, is that there were problems that existed. There's still problems that do exist, but it's cool to see how technology is adapting and like becoming more uniform for people, so that way we can like easily learn these things and not have to do weird random hacks to make it work. I think of like the aspect ratio stuff right now, whereas like aspect ratio is like, you got to do this min percentage, and you got to make sure that you
Yeah.
do it this way. But now they're like, all right, here you go, here's the ratio, and like, oh, thank God, like we've had this for how long now?
Yeah. 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 I actually, when you brought up the point of, you know, you don't get it right the first time or the third or the fifth or 10th, I started doing some stuff with I wanted to start learning Rust. So
Hmm,
I started doing some Rust stuff. I think it was the Rustlings.
okay.
And I came across something. I think this was the one where you do the different kind of, I guess I'll call them modules for the
Yeah.
lack of a better term. And I got stuck on one, and I'm like, that's not right. And then I got to the 10th time, I'm like, that's not okay. I got to do a little bit of research. Research is important to me as
Yes.
far as if you're stuck on something and asking questions, because I asked a couple people that I know in another Discord server. I'm like, you've played around with Rust, can you help me out with, and turns out they were able to help, and I was able to figure it out and learn at the same time. So important for me,
Yes.
and I think you agree that asking for help is important. And
100%.
yeah, yeah. And I tell people when they say, "Oh, this may sound like a, you know, uh, I don't want to use I want to use the right words. This ain't may sound like a silly question, but that's there's no such thing as a silly question. Just go ahead and ask the question, and if I
Yeah.
can help, or if I can guide you and lead you in the right direction, I will. So, um,
100%.
yeah,
I agree with that. Especially with like, for instance, like on Twitch, people are always expecting everyone to have answers. And I like, one of the things I made sure to
yeah,
take into my heart is like, uh, as a teacher, you don't have to have the answers. Like, it's okay to be like, I don't know. I think
yeah,
that's like very important skill to have as an engineer. And that's something I also do on Twitch, is I do things I don't know, and I'm willing to ask for help immediately there, which is very, it takes a great amount of courage to do those things,
hmm,
both just to ask for help, but also to do it in front of everyone. But I think it's very important to like the growth of yourself.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, like with me and accessibility, I am no expert by any means, and I don't know. There's a lot I don't know, and people, I'll get questions. I'm like, I have no idea, but I'll find out. Or
Yeah.
here's this resource you can use, and it's yeah, it's to me, it's impossible to know everything there.
Exactly.
So
There's just no way.
yeah. Um, Now I've popped into your streams a few times here and there, and said hi, and you do a lot of Rust related programming.
Mhm.
So I wanted to talk a lot about that as my schedule clears. Thankfully, I'd like to start dabbling in that a little bit more. So for the people that are listening or watching, can you tell us about Rust and what Rust is?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes I find it challenging to kind of like describe Rust. I think because it touches so many new things now. But I think the best ways of thinking about it is It's one of the other languages out there that's really trying to make it easier, predictable to how to write a type safe program. Rust is a strongly typed language. So unlike something like JavaScript, where you can kind of put anything into any kind of holder or variable, Rust specifically is tries to make sure that you declare like how the types of the variables are, and that you can control like how often that they change in like the simplest of words, I guess, is the way I'm trying to phrase it there.
Mm.
Um, you'll see Rust in different applications, such as like hardware. You can see it also into the web. We are seeing a lot more with WebAssembly. That's a direction that it's going, which I think is really cool because one of the abilities that it affords is us to be able to connect the stuff that we're already doing with the web, but using something like Rust that basically allows us to have the type safety and through WebAssembly put it into the web. And that's kind of like what its applications kind of look towards. We're seeing a lot of bigger companies also trying to adapt and use Rust, which is incredible. We see like a big surge of Rust developers moving into Amazon, into Microsoft, into Facebook, all these different bigger companies, which is really neat because it means that it's definitely being adapted and being used.
When I first looked at it, I went, "Oh, I like challenges. I like interesting stuff." So that's kind of what drew me to it and all
Hmm.
the talk about it. And so when I first, started reading into it and everything, it was like, oh, this is going to be like, uh, jumping out of an airplane, skydiving. uh, for me, anyways, because I've been more heavily in the last decade front end focused, but I've been a back end developer as well. So
Oh,
um, it was interesting and piqued my curiosity. Uh, so you gave some good examples. That was one of the other questions I had, was some real world examples of where Rust is out in the wild. I'll say. Um, so I'm going to step back to the Party Corgi community because I'm been so busy lately,
you're doing a lot of
and
things.
I have a full calendar. I don't know how it got that way, but it got that way. Tell us a little bit about the Party Corgi community, and I definitely talk about touching upon community, and I have my own little Discord community as well, and I've been a part of communities for a while now, since I got on the. It's been a while. um, uh, bulletin boards and forums and all that good stuff way back then. Um, so could you tell us about Party Corgi, and what do there's a lot of people in there, a lot of great people in there, a lot of great, information going back and forth, I see. So could you tell us a little bit about that and, the community there?
Yeah. So the Party Corgi Discord, like in its inception, was focused around like bringing content creators into a space, and this is like mostly focused around like development programmers.
Mhm.
And I think that in the course of its growth, like it kind of naturally continued to just boom in different dimensions. So we like start with talking about like how content creation from things from like blog posts, from videos, from Twitch, from YouTube, all these different dimensions. But then we also realize like it's important to think about the whole self. Like what are the things that make us? Because like that's the when I like using the word community because it's like a community isn't just like I only talk about the things that bring us together. I think it's the things all about us, right? Like it's the full slices of us together. So even though we primarily around the content creation. It's things like what are the things that we're learning, what are the things that we're trying to do. We have different channels inside of our Discord for those sorts of things. For instance, like we have a section for baking and cooking because we're human beings. Like we want to share in the things that we do. We have things for like mobility, endurance, and power, kind of exercising and whatnot. There's also things for like art, for doodles and sketches. I love the we kind of grow the community in that way where we're talking about not only like the things that bring us together, but all of us, like the whole self, which is like a loaded thing that I know like companies have taken advantage of and like use, but I really do truly believe because we're not like a part of any company, like that's it's a safe thing to really describe it as is that we don't have to just talk about only content creation. We're not just content creators. We're people first.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the important part. That kind of reminds me of, when we're doing our thing, doing our, when we're working and we're putting in all that time and working, we got to step back and say, okay, I got to take care of me. Like
Yep.
today, this morning, I got up real early and went to the gym for a workout before I started my day, and my day will go until 7 o'clock, past 7 o'clock tonight
Whew.
here. So it's been it'll be a long day, but I always like sharing food, especially lobster rolls. I can't get enough of those. Um, it's important, and it's always been that way since as far back as I can remember being a part of any community that I have been a part of, where it's just not this niche thing. It's not just, like you said, it's not just content creation. It's
Right.
food or travel or photography or stuff like that. So it's
And
good to kind of step away from the norm and kind of focus on something else. Like when I go hiking or something and share pictures of that too. So
exactly.
yeah,
I love the ability to be able to share more of it because I want to, I want people to see that I care about them. And so I love the fact that we can like take that space and also like have people participate as much as they want. I think that's like another dimension of like what makes community really healthy is like you don't have to be fully engaged all the time because you can't keep like now that we are so large you can't keep up with every message that is there, so it's like important to like set those kind of moments as well as be like let me like participate now, like now that I have the space capacity to do so.
yeah, definitely. Um, are you a part of any other communities? And if so, what about community you, I guess, love about,
Hmm. So I am a part of other things, nothing related to web development, which is ironic because I you feel like I would be a part of so many things. I think like especially with a lot of online communities, it's hard to like to keep up with everything. So I try to limit how many more I join. But the other stuff that I keep up with is like related to video games and the people that make those video games. And like it's really interesting to see how the dynamics are different as far as like how people like how much cultivation people do to their communities. I think like that's something I've really kind of learned a lot is like figuring out how people say like, oh, this is like what these are our norms and like this is how we show our norms. That's something I'm learning a lot more about when I join other places and like kind of peek into them. And I think about that when I think about like the Party Corgis, like what are the things that make us us, and like what are the ways that we set like this is what is acceptable for us beyond just saying we have a code of conduct and like we go and abide by our code of conduct.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And the thing too that about community with me is, yeah, the stuff that sets that community apart from others, some sort of unique quality. Like, this one was content creation, because
Mhm.
at the time when I joined, I was like, that I was kind of timid about it. I was like, hey, does anybody know how I can join? Because I was just starting out, and I wanted to know, how to do the Twitch thing, and how to, share what I've been able to learn over the past, 22 professional years, close to a little over 40 total from just doing it and loving
Doing,
what I
yeah.
do. Um, so that's what attracted me to that community was, but at the same time, like we were talking about, it's those extra things, and those extra things also attract me. It's not just like with my channel, it's there's a little bit of programming stuff in there, a little bit of front end stuff, but there's
Fair.
also that uh you know that do you like taking pictures? Here's a photography channel, or
Oh.
food. For me, food, I always post pictures, so
Gotta have lobster roll. Can't
yeah,
cannot.
yeah. So cool. So I did want to ask, and I kind of skipped over these questions, but I wanted to get back to these about
Feel free.
Rust. What's your favorite thing about Rust, or favorite part about Rust programming?
Ironically, it's not the programming part. It's really the community, which is it all comes back.
Yeah.
I think a lot about how languages are set up, both by like how do people write the code, but how do people also talk about the code? Like how do people like agree upon things? Like I think Rust sets a really good example around like how to set organizationally, like how do we talk about writing Rust? What are the
Mhm.
ways that we can do it better? What are the ways that we can do health checks? Like I think a lot about those sorts of mechanisms, because like not a lot of languages really do that, right? Like a lot of languages aren't 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 fully community driven. I think that sometimes we say they are, but I feel like there's always going to be some arbiter, somebody who or some group that's always going to be like, no, we're not going to do this, even if the entire community feels differently. And I think Rust takes a kind of slightly different approach with how it engages the community about these things and like what the acts have to be in order to make something new. And I think that speaks to the health of like what programming languages will go towards, even though it's really not a new language per se. Like it's been around for a hot bit. I think around like 2012 is like when it's officially came out, which is short in some languages if you're comparing it to something like C or Java.
Mhm.
um but I think in terms of like a lot of people don't know that it's actually like it's been longer than just the hype has put it in there. And I think that's what surprises a lot of people. But in the same token, starting with a foundational knowledge of like community and like how that needs to happen, I think that's what sets it apart from a lot of other languages.
Yeah. And I took a little while back, but I took a look into the community, and I like communities that are uh, inclusive, welcoming, and it's very, very much so those things. So, and so this next question: what are some good resources for folks to learn Rust? And I can, we can get some links together, and I'll put those in the show notes for after for everybody. So,
Yeah. So right now there's like that's one of the things that Rust especially is trying to work on. One of the things that they said in this like latest survey is like finding more resources for people to learn, um, both from like a textual format. I think we do a really good job of prioritizing like here are books to read through. Rust kind of has this concept of making books. They kind of like use the markdown book format, so that way they do it. Rust has an official like the Rust programming language book, which is I can send that link over to you. And that's like what I use to learn it. It's very comprehensive from beginning to end as far as like what are the mechanics of Rust, how to think about it, what are some of the problems that it goes through. And I like that kind of format. If you're
mhm.
really kind of a traditionalist that like go from beginning to end and you want the depth. The other tool that you mentioned before is the going through Rustlings and like going through a more exercise based approach. So it takes the concepts and puts them into exercises for you to learn, which kind of facilitates the research bit. So you gotta research and figure out like, hey, this is how to do that thing. Chris Biscardi actually has an egghead course that he does going through each of the exercises that were for Rustlings, which I highly recommend if you're a video person and want an explanation to a solution, because that's one of the things that it didn't have at the time was it didn't have any solutions, which is kind of makes it hard to know like, did I do it right or wrong? Am I thinking like a Rust station? That's what we call Rust folks.
Yep.
And then Chris recently also just made a there's like an early access Egghead course if you're an Egghead subscriber that is also learning about Rust, which is a more like project based thing, which I think is also going to be really good. So those are the things that I know of off the top of my head.
Right. And I did go through those videos of his as well. And those are great too. I'll put that out there. I think we've got through pretty much all the Twitch stuff and the Rust stuff. So we both spoke about this a little bit before we started on about wanting to touch on removing biases.
Yeah.
And let's go into that. I'm always, trying to fit in during my day to remove biases. Originally, I would think of when I hear the term bias, I would hear, I don't like that certain thing. I prefer this certain thing over that certain thing. So let's go, talk about that a little bit. And there's a great book out there by David Dylan Thomas. And it's from a book apart, and I do not have that on me, unfortunately. But I'll look at get that pull
It's
out. Pull that
the
up.
Design for Cognitive Bias, I believe.
Yes.
Is the book. Yeah.
Okay. So what would you like to, go into on removing biases in the call to action that you were talking about?
Oh, there's so much. I think that I think for me, the thing that I really want to emphasize for folks is recognizing that you are not the user per se of whatever you're building. And I think that's such a really hard thing to step away from. Because you'll build something thinking like yourself being like, this is how I will see this thing, and you will be like, this will be amazing, and this will be perfect. But ultimately you are not necessarily the end user of everything that you create. If you work for a corporation, 9 out of 10 times you're probably not the end user of this thing. In addition to that, even if you are the end user, you may not be the person that it's designated for. And if you use yourself as that, you're limiting the scope of who you're trying to reach, right? If we're thinking about creating a world in which anyone has the ability to use this thing, we have to be really thinking about who are the people who would be using this and what are the ways that they'll be able to use this thing. And that's something I challenge everyone to really look into, is really think about what are the people who might struggle with your application, and what are you doing to build the affordances so that way they have access to it. And it's really easy to be like, those people, that wouldn't be a thing. And it's like, no. There are many people in your life that you may not even realize that have things that make it difficult for them to do the same thing as you.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not realize that, but that's very important to be cognizant of, especially in the world of the web, where it's really easy to kind of forget how everyone else has different access.
Yes, and that's really a focal point regarding accessibility, which I am heavily into. And as somebody I know who puts it, you want to use, you said we're not the user. Totally agree. But this person also uses the term, design for the people on the other side of the glass.
Yeah.
Which I thought is absolutely perfectly, almost, to put
Perfect.
it. I ran into an issue where I was doing an accessibility audit for a company.
Mm-hmm.
and a stakeholder told me, we don't have disabled users. And I said, you don't know this. And this person said, I know my our customers. And I said, you still don't know.
Right.
You still don't know. All this while he's wearing eyeglasses. And I said, those eyeglasses are an assistive technology.
Right.
So after reading the book, and I have it pulled up here, it's book number 33 on A Book Apart. It's a bookapart.com. It's designed for cognitive bias, like you said. It's a great book. I've gone through it. I'm going to probably go through it again. It touches on a lot of the different biases that I never even would have ever thought
There's
of.
a lot.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit. And like in our us being humans, we will face them. And the unfortunate parts of it is that we'll never get rid of them, right? Like we can't get rid of our biases. We can only be made aware to try to reduce the amount that the bias affects us. And I think that's a very important kind of like thing to be cognizant of, because if you kind of resist it, you make it worse.
Yes, yes. And that touches to the point where I've been trying to get better with when I'm designing something or developing something. I got to make sure that is this going to affect a certain um, type of user.
Yep.
Is this going to affect somebody with a vision disability? It's going to affect somebody with a cognitive disability. So all of those, and being, like you said, cognizant of what we're doing is one step in the right direction on not eliminating them, I guess I would say, but being more aware of their those biases are there. Let's do our best to push them off to the side and avoid them so that we can create better things on the web or
Right.
even in general life.
Absolutely. And I think like for instance, like a great example of like of ways to do better. For like in Twitch, even in I'm gonna throw it back into this, even for something like a podcast, right? I am sure there's something that you're thinking about with regards to transcripts. Like I like those are things that people think, oh, no one's going to read this. I'm like, no, like people read these things, like people need these things. And I think we so much live in a world where we only think of like how we interact with the world. So it's hard to remember that there are other people that are not like us. They don't have the same ability. It's not like we hate people, but it's because we just don't realize that everyone experiences the world different. And it's our goal as individuals, as people, to figure out how do we make sure everyone can have the same access, and same access meaning like the ability to have the resource, not necessarily like, oh, you now only get to see a video or you only get to see an audio, but more so like how do everyone get to say have the experience.
Right, right. And I make sure to have those transcripts available. Those transcripts I have available on Gists on GitHub, and I put the link in with the video that I have on that I upload to YouTube for the YouTube channel that has captions. And
Perfect.
I spend a lot of time and I make sure that it's right. So that's a good point you just made, where I will take the file from the recording and transcribe it to put into YouTube, and then hopefully YouTube gets the captioning right, which sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't. And I have to go through, and I've spent a good few days fixing the
Wow.
captioning, uh, just so there's that piece of being inclusive and making sure the folks that need those captions to be well timed, and that it happens. So that's definitely, that's always on my mind, and I have it written down here. Make sure you do the captions.
and that's just ways that we're just becoming better. I think overall we're thinking more like, I'm sure like when podcasting and like video series were first starting, people didn't realize, you know, there's actually an important need for these things. And that's it's I try to avoid, I think one of the other things is I try to avoid the like rationalizing around shame. I
Mhm.
think people, like when you shame somebody, is like, you didn't do this thing. That's like not necessarily always the most helpful thing. So it's like realizing like this is the affordance, like this is how to change it into support so that it turns into actionable ability. Like you're already doing this work, so like let's get you to do this work. You already made the video. Now that you have the video, getting the transcripts will make it even better. So that way everyone has access to it.
And the shame game is, yeah, that doesn't. So I was talking about this the other day with somebody, and I said, I don't, I try not to, unless it's, a case that's very, uh, I don't know how to put it.
There are reasons to use shame for
Yes,
corporations specifically.
yes,
I
yes,
will I'm at individuals, it's difficult. I
yes,
think that it's not a like one, there's no like right or wrong answer. I think it's more of a spectrum. But
yeah,
like for instance, the corporations that have loads of money
hmm, yeah,
should
exactly,
should not have an excuse to not be able to do these
right,
things. You have the resources. You just have decided not to invest into them.
right, right. Thank you. That was what I was trying to say. So with individuals, it's more of being diplomatic lately for me. Um, do I forget? Sometimes I do,
We're
because
humans.
we're humans.
Right.
Um, but with corporations, it's different.
I 100% think that we should expect corporations to be able to do more. They're made of individuals, of course, but I think that a big part, like we just said, is the reducing bias, and it's our responsibility to be the advocates for the people in the room that may not be in the room. And I think that's why it's so important for us to like be aware of those things and really draw from who are users, not just the users that we are. And that's what I go back towards. Like that's something that we think about at Newsella is before we released any of our new types of content, like we did audio and video, we're like, we need to think of developing. This is like the bottom line. How do we develop audio descriptions? How do we develop subtitles and captions? Like, how do we do those things? Because those are our bottom line. To
Mm,
have access for everyone, like we need to think, what does access actually look like?
yeah, yeah. So getting back to that conversation I had, I equated the shaming of individuals to when I was a teenager. I didn't want my parents telling me what to do. So that's the approach that I take with the shame game. Like, oh, you didn't use you didn't meet the standards for color contrast, for instance. I use these color contrasts all the time as an example.
Right.
I don't go at somebody and say, shame on you. You need to do this. It's kind of like, hey, this kind of, you know, just to let you know, this doesn't meet,
Yeah. And it's
standards.
kind to tell them that. I don't think you're trying to put them on blast or anything. You're
Right.
telling them like you know you can do better, and you just want them to be able to do that, and that this is how. And I
Yeah.
think like that's it, that's important. Like we can't ignore it. We need to
Yeah.
be able to do better. And I think it's really hard because this is part of the bias. This is part of our feelings because we're like, oh no, it's like a problem of me, but it's like this action that I needed to correct, or this thing I need to correct. It's not speaking about you as a person unless you retaliate. And if you retaliate, then you're digging your own hole. I have nothing to say about that then.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will admit, I've been down that road a few times, a lot in the
We're
past.
human.
Yep. So it's all a learning experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as we don't have a hard stop. I've got three last questions that I usually ask folks, that are on, and I'll ask you, what about the web these days that excites you and keeps you excited in what you do?
I ooh, what keeps me excited about what I do? I think for me, the thing that really keeps me excited is like the kind of era that we're in now, where we're seeing a lot more dev tools being created for helping us build better experiences. I think like being able to in addition to like having tools like libraries and frameworks and all these things, I think it's really incredible to see browsers becoming more equipped with like how to actually tell like how will a web page be interactable. I think like recently Firefox just made it so you have like the tab order actually being determined directly inside of the developer experience, the developer edition of the web browser. And I think that's like one of the things that I like love is like we're figuring out how to do more things that we have to be able to do,
Mhm.
and we're putting it in the forefront for us. And that makes me excited to continue to do more web developments because we're thinking about like how do we make sure to make this the priority, or like how do we make access once again the focus. It's not like oh, we forgot to do it. It's more like it's in front of you, you have the tools, because the hardest parts are knowing what we have to look for and then also having the tools to do it.
Right. They do have that the what is it, pulling it up here. In the course. Yeah. Under. Anyways, they do have the, where you can find what the tab order is. They also just, I was reading, was it a day or two, about how they have, you can see you can test for prefers color scheme
Oh, I
is
didn't know
is
that.
now.
I think Chrome has something like this too, where it can change it for you. It can't do
Yeah,
the test. I think it can change it for you though.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
so cool.
yeah, yeah. I have to agree. Those are some of the things that I'm looking at and thinking, well, yeah, this is. I remember when CSS wasn't a thing, so this is it's all awesome.
it it's truly I think it's incredible to see it go from like being something we just have like Netscape, and then we're like, all right, let's keep building more and more, and then we're like, oh crap, like wow, this is like I think even to the fact that we have access to it on a mobile device is incredible, because like living through an era of like not having smartphones, very different from now living through an era of smartphones and then being like, what's next, like how do you go further
Mhm.
from here?
Yeah. So my next question: if there was one thing that you could change about the web we know today, what would that one thing be? Could be anything.
uh I had the first thing that popped into my mind is going to be very controversial, and I'm sorry to bring to bring it.
I like that.
I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to make you upset. I think it's going to make other people upset. I wish that we prioritize HTML and CSS as core components to building websites, as opposed to fully relying onto a lot of JavaScript. I wish that we had more resources put into that, so that way we didn't have everything that we have today. I think that was a mistake. I think that we realized how drastic of it ended up being, but I really hope that's something I would see in the next decade, is like we find ways to do more things natively where we don't need to like rely on extra tools. And it's not to say JavaScript is inherently evil or anything like that, but
Mhm.
it's like there we shouldn't have to rely on JavaScript to do things that what native web should be able and capable to do, and we need to figure out ways to bring that back.
Right. Yeah. So I'm on the same page.
I I think that there's a lot of affordances. Of course, like we
Yeah.
get to do things that we never were able to do before. But I think that if I had to change anything, I really wish we could have just invested to making HTML and CSS stronger.
Yeah. definitely.
What that looks like, I have no idea.
Yeah, that would be something I would have to. That's going to make me think later on, which is great because CSS I know could be if we had, for instance, box sizing border box in the browsers instead of having to put it in our style sheets all the time. That would be great, but we can't do it because everything's built on 25-year-old legacy
Yeah.
code. So
If we had the tools that we had today, back then, I think the web would look very different. I think if we had HTML and CSS the way that we have it today, I think we wouldn't be nearly in where we are today. And I'm interested to think about like what would that look
yeah,
like without a JavaScript world.
yeah, yeah. And I fired off a tweet a while back about it had to do with performance and accessibility. No, it wasn't. It was, there was a web page out I was auditing. It was 2 MB, but over half of it was JavaScript,
Wow.
and
Wow.
it wasn't a it wasn't a, I guess, content heavy or page, but at the same time, I'm thinking about that person who's out in the middle of nowhere
Yeah.
with a 2G or 3G phone and not being able to access it. And that got a lot of flack.
And this goes back to bias, right? Like we
Mm.
think that everyone is on a MacBook and we develop for those resources. And it's not to say like, oh my gosh, like you're insensitive because you didn't think about these people. Like it's there's so much more loaded into that. There's so many things that happen, right? Like it just the web in itself wasn't capable of doing the things that it needed to do, and I wish that we could have those tools before, like where we are now. We had to learn a lot of things along the way to get to this point, but I hope that like we could take those lessons back then, throw it into here, and we just be dandy.
Yeah, yeah. And originally, it was just the web was made for scientists to transfer documents back and forth. A lot of people don't realize that now.
I love the joke of like there's these like cables that that run under the underwater, right? Like this is how the internet works. But then sharks are the most dangerous things to the internet because they can actually interfere with the cables.
Yeah. What was there was another thing about this. There was something about tubes. There was some politicians that were talking about tubes a few years ago. The internet was a series of tubes or something. Kind of like when you put the little canister into the bank thing and it just zips it back to the teller.
That's honestly how I describe the internet to a lot of people. I was like, that's just really all it is. This is just information coming back and forth through big old pipes.
Yeah. So, last question.
Let's do it.
Favorite part of front end development that you really like the most, and tying in with the theme of and the title of the podcast, what do you nerd out over?
Ooh, this is a great question. Ooh, I don't. The thing that I nerd about, I guess I'm just like so fascinated about, is not even something I'm good at. I just am so fascinated by generative art, and I think like I guess like that might be not specifically front end technology, but I think it's interesting to see people using like CSS and HTML and JavaScript to build these things, like to build art. And I'm like, I don't know how it works. It's not like I have no explanation to it, but it is truly one of those things where I see it, I'm just like, incredible. The people who use HTML, CSS to make like just art in general is incredible. The amount of work that people do, I'm like, how do you do it? How do you do this? I think of a single div, and like that in itself is like so much skill.
Yeah. So that kind of reminds me of the CSS art that we've seen on CodePen, for instance,
Yeah.
is phenomenal. There's one with a lighthouse, a coastline. There's
Like, how do they do that? I don't know
yeah.
how to do it, but it definitely is. It's definitely the things that I am like talent, like skills and talent is being shown, and I wish I had just enough skill to
Right.
make a website. Like they can just make art. Like this is incredible,
Yeah.
and I am so grateful that they share that with us. Like they share the things that they create.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the that's some next level stuff that I'm left scratching my head going, how do they do it? I mean, I looked at it. It was just a simple. I think it was somebody did a CSS thing with. I think it was just like an old cassette player, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at it like, that is awesome.
But like, how?
And I
How
looked
do
at
they
the
do
code and
that?
I went, yeah, I looked at the code and I went, how do they do that? It's just, I'm on the same page again. I think it's
Like
awesome. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
incredible. There's like many things. Like I spend most of my day looking into different things about accessibility. Uh, but like I don't think I'll ever have this skill of being so crafty at like making this art. I won't have it, and I recognize it, but I will always admire other people's work. That like it's just so cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I especially love it when there's a little bit of animation thrown in or a lot of animation. Like there is a CSS kind of like, it's a game that you can
Oh,
literally play in CodePen,
interesting.
and I'll have to dig up that link. I played it one day a little while, like a month or two ago. I should have kept the link. I'll have to forward that to you because it's like being on, I'll when it gave me the feeling of being on an Atari 2600 again as a kid. So it was
That's
really,
amazing.
really cool. It is amazing. So I've got all my questions in that I had for you. I want to thank you for coming on. It's
Thank you for
been
having me
a
once again.
great conversation. So usually when I close out, I let my guests, tell the listeners or the viewers what they have currently going on and where they can find you online. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, as far as what I've got going on, I am wonderfully here in this podcast. I will be doing some things later on into the year, which I'm excited for. I can't really speak about them yet, but you
Yeah.
can find me anywhere on the Twitter sphere. I am basically almost anywhere on the internet under my tag Maxell. Funnily enough, Maxell is my first name, so Maxcell. But I go by Prince. It's much easier for people to say. So you can find me anywhere on the Twitter, on the internet, specifically my website, which is prince.dev, which is short and succinct.
Yeah. 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 Which are you doing any streaming?
Twitch. Yes, you're totally right. So I do Twitch streams every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight now, I guess, now that we're in that time period.
Which is, I don't know about you, but that's thrown me off for the past, well, since since we had to spring forward. Um,
I love sun. I love waking up at 6 o'clock to the sun. I am originally from Florida, and I now live in New York, and the winter seasons are things that I'm not accustomed to, and the cold, the darkness. I
yeah,
just don't know how people do it.
I
Florida
am.
just had just rain.
I'm fairly close to you. I'm up in Maine, so yeah, yeah, I know all about the winter, and I just turned 50 this year, so I'm getting a little bit cranky about the snow and the cold and the weather. So yeah,
It's just
I need
unbearable.
sun too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I lived in Orange County, California, and in San Diego for a little while, and
Sounds amazing.
that boiled me.
It's just sunlight,
Yeah.
just sun, warmth.
Yeah.
Below it's what, 70 degrees?
Yeah. So Twitch Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m.
That's me.
Eastern time,
Mhm.
daylight or standard.
I will be there. We'll
Okay.
always be hanging out. We usually, more than not, are doing stuff with Rust. So if you're ever interested in learning, if you ever have any questions, you're always welcome to be in the Twitch chat. You're also welcome to just lurk around and just hang out.
And that's it. Anything else?
Nope, that's
Nope.
all we're at.
All right. Well, again, Prince, thank you so much for coming on. I, again, enjoyed the conversation, enjoyed talking about community Rust and everything. It's always a pleasure to see you and hear from you and, see the tweets and everything. And I will try to get into a stream. Tuesdays aren't that bad for me anymore. So I think I'm going to find the time to pencil 6:30
Hang out,
clear.
chill around, you know.
Come in and say hi. And I recommend other people to pop into the stream, and links will be provided in the show notes again. And it's a great time. Love seeing you working on the Rust stuff. The Rust stations are a very cool group of people. So and before I close this out, Rust Station, it's so close to crustaceans, and I have a fondness for lobster. So that was
Exactly.
another thing.
It came, the stars aligned. It's that new programming language.
Yeah.
Perfect food, like pun, like just here we are.
Yeah, it was great. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is great. This is cool. I'm going to have to do this. So again, thank you very much. And I want to just say, please like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. This has been the Front End Nerdery podcast. We'll be back, or I'll be back next month with a brand new guest and brand new topics to talk about. And until then, we shall see you all later.